The Heart of Wales, or Central Wales line, runs between Llanelli on the south coast to Craven Arms just over the English border, a distance of 90¼ miles. Regional railway services continue on to Shrewsbury. Likewise, our journey begins at Swansea, the second city of Wales. Swansea is just over 190 miles from London by rail and is the terminus for the hourly intercity 125 shuttle service. At the other extreme, Heart of Wales services are formed by Class 153 single units. The line passes between the Swansea carriage sidings to our right and the old goods depot just prior to demolition on our left. Now get the route divergence signal as we approach Swansea East Junction, where the main line to Cardiff and London continues ahead. Through trains calling at Swansea High Street have to reverse from the terminal station in order to continue west towards Carmarthen, Pembroke Dock and Milford Haven. The Swansea Loop line forms the third side of a triangle with the two routes into the station. Swansea is surrounded by high ground, and for the first mile or so, the railway follows the natural valley of the River Tawe, but already climbing at 1 in 60. We now begin a tight 110-degree turn that will take us round to a westerly heading. Bounded by the three sides of the triangle of lines, you can see Intercity's Landor Depot. The Swansea Loop converges at Loop West Junction. It still carries certain passenger trains, such as the peak summer Intercity 125 to and from Fishguard Harbour. The train also avoids Carmarthen by means of a similar loop, technically the main line. Incidentally, the signalling for the Swansea area through to Llanelli is nowadays under the control of Port Talbot. The line we are now on opened in October 1852 as a 30-mile extension of the South Wales Railway to Carmarthen. It had reached Swansea High Street from Chepstow 2 years earlier. The South Wales was a Great Western project in all but name. Engineered by Isambard Kingdom Brunel, it was laid with his 7-foot broad-gauge track. Rising more steeply now at 1 in 52, we pass under a couple of flying arches. These were designed by Brunel to keep unstable cuttings from slipping. We now enter the 788-yard-long Cocket Tunnel. The old station here closed in 1964, and just beyond it is the summit of the climb. The line continues a further 8 miles to Llanelli, 5 1/4 of which have been signalled. The only feature of note is the 18-span Lacha viaduct. The 153 reverses direction at Llanelli and heads back from whence it came for the next couple of miles to Llandeilo Junction East. With the conversion of the Class 155 two-car sprinters into single units, an additional driving cab had to be created. Swansea driver Di Jones is now in what is generally known as the small end, that is the newer but smaller cab. Di is accompanying us as far as Llandrindod. By the way, the starting signal had just developed an interlocking fault, and Di has been given permission to pass at danger. The closed-circuit TV level crossing is monitored by Llanelli West signal box, although the routing is still under the control of Port Talbot. The former relief lines on either side are now out of use. The up and down loops here are still in use, as is Llandeilo Junction Yard to our right. The line off to our left is the Genwen Loop, which leads to the British Steel Corporation's Trostra tin plate works. We leave the main line at Llandeilo Junction East, milepost 0 of the Heart of Wales line. lines converging from the west at Genwen Junction are also from the steelworks. We are now on what are known as the Swansea District lines, this section being the earliest part of the Heart of Wales route. The line can be traced back to the Llanelli Railway and Dock Company, which opened a 6-mile standard gauge line from Llanelli to Pontarddulais back in 1839. The railway follows the Lacha Valley all the way. It was built to carry local coal to Llanelli docks, and a year later was extended to Pantyffynnon, as well as to what became a branch from there to Garnant, serving the Betws colliery. It was originally worked by horse, but as the line gradually lengthened, horsepower was displaced by steam. This is Llangynllo, 4 3/4 miles from Llanelli and one of 21 request stops. We now move forward to Morlais Junction, where the up and down district or Swansea avoiding line diverges. This well-used freight route also serves various rail-connected works in its 13-mile length. It rejoins the main line, 1.5 miles to the south of Neath at Courtsart Junction. One of its many appendages leads down to Swansea docks. This part of the route was also double track. You can just make out where the old down line converged from the right. It passed beneath the double track district lines to avoid the conflict of crossing on the level. We are now passing beneath the M4. Just beyond it, the down and up loop lines join at Hendy Junction. They form the third side of a triangle with the Swansea District line. This is the 88-yard-long Pontarddulais tunnel, immediately beyond which the line crosses the river. The Llanelli Company also opened a direct line to Pontarddulais from Swansea Victoria in 1867, And Heart of Wales trains took this route up until Dr. Beeching wielded the axe in 1964. It's hard to believe that this was where the two lines met, at Pontarddulais Junction. 4 platforms were connected by a covered footbridge and displayed large wooden name boards stating "Change here for LNWR trains to Swansea" on one side and for GWR trains to Llanelli on the other. Today, the station is just a halt with bus shelter accommodation. Although most of the route became owned by the LNWR, the 13-mile section from Pontarddulais to Llandeilo remained the sole property of the Llanelli Company until being absorbed by the GWR in 1889. The LNWR, of course, exercised running powers over the line to gain access to Swansea, Victoria. Passing milepost 9, we are now 1 mile from Pantyffynnon, from where the signalling for the whole line is controlled. These are the only surviving semaphores on the Heart of Wales line. From now on, the route is operated on the no signalman token system, whereby the signalman can authorize the release to the driver of an electric key token at the start of each single line section. The first token to Llandeilo is handed over by the signalman. Pantyffynnon is also the junction with the little-used mineral lines to Abernant and Betws drift mine. The last passenger services over the branch ran to Brenaman in 1958. The station, as well as the signal box, is still manned. The line crosses a minor but nonetheless busy local road, and the gates are opened and shut by hand. We are now approaching Ffairfach on the outskirts of Llandeilo. This final extension of the old Llanelli railway opened in 1857. Clearly visible to the left is the old embankment, which carried the LNWR line from Carmarthen, which converged here at the former Carmarthen Valley Junction. A total distance of just over 15 miles, it ran for 98 years, from 1865 to 1963. We are now crossing the River Towy, a valley of which we follow as far as Llandovery. Llandeilo was the interchange for the aforementioned Carmarthen trains, which ran from the other side of the former island platform. Never dieselised, in latter years the branch train usually consisted of just one coach hauled by a pannier tank. This is also the first passing loop, and Dai has to exchange his Pantyffynnon to Llandeilo single-line token with that for the next section to Llandovery.
Box. 2M51 inside clear at Llandeilo. Go and I put the Pantyffynnon staff in. Okay. So you go and I got the Llandovery staff.
Right, carry on. Ta.
The height of the platform adjacent to the former booking hall is as original, when coaches still had individual running boards. Although the station building and BR-built signal box are now boarded up, the station still retains some of its former character. An extensive array of trackwork straddled both sides of the line well into BR days. As well as the goods warehouse and coal yard, with their associated sidings, there were some private rail connections too. The 11 miles from Llandeilo to Llandovery was opened in 1858 by the Vale of Towy Railway Company and was leased to the Llanelli Railway for 10 years. It later became a GWR-LNWR joint line. The section is on a gently rising gradient of no more than 1 in 200. The River Tawy can be fast-flowing even in summer. The new Llanrtyd Bridge replaced the former structure, which collapsed under the weight of a two-car DMU in October 1987 after successive days of heavy rain. Tragically, the driver and 3 passengers perished. The new steel truss bridge is 72 yards long. Its 200-ton weight is supported by concrete abutments set well back from the river. The Black Cross is a level crossing warning board. Many speed limits on the heart of Wales are determined by sighting and stopping distances on the 100 or so occupational crossings, such as the 30 miles per hour here at Llanelli Farm, just beyond milepost 23. As part of a new safety initiative, many have recently been fitted with direct phones to Pantyffynnon signal box. The bridge crosses Afon Sawdde. And this is Afon Bran. We are now arriving at Llangadog, a small market town set on the previously mentioned tributary of the River Tawy. Up until the mid-1960s, the classic GWR designed station consisted of a loop, 2 platforms and numerous sidings. A permanent way gang occupies part of the former station yard. Incidentally, Llangadog Crossing now has police surveillance cameras to photograph any road vehicles risking to cross when the lights are at danger. On the approach to Llandovery at Llwynjac, the line crosses the Tywi for the final time by means of a plate girder bridge of 4 spans. The station building on the down platform is still intact, having been manned on a part-time basis until quite recently. Llandovery is a medium-sized market town and touring centre with a long history. During the Roman occupation, the fort of Llanwrtyd was established nearby and became a meeting point for their military roads. During the Norman conquest, Llandovery Castle lay at the centre of the struggle between the Normans and the Welsh. The A40 trunk road from London to Fishguard crosses the line here and is protected by a full barrier level crossing operated by the train crews.
Right, we're going to get the Llanwrtyd Wells to open. Okay, ta.
The 27.5-mile section from Llandovery to Llandrindod Wells was begun in 1863 by a subsidiary of the LNWR. It was named the Central Wales Extension Railway, but the CWER was absorbed by the LNWR by the time this final stretch of line actually opened, the 8th of October 1868. With it, the Heart of Wales line was complete all the way from Swansea to Shrewsbury. Because the two halves of the line had grown from opposite ends independently, the mileposts change here. 29 miles and 40 chains from Llandeilo Junction now becomes 59 miles 14 chains from Craven Arms. For the next few miles, the line follows the course of the River Bran, the gradient gradually steepening to a maximum of 1 in 80. Bran Valley is spanned by Llanwrtyd Viaduct. The 18-arch curved stone structure is 283 yards in length, lies halfway up a 5-mile climb, which takes the line through the legendary Loaf Pass at a constant 1 in 60, the steepest gradient of the entire route. The view from the top of Sugarloaf Mountain on a clear day is spectacular. It may not be the best place to go train spotting, but there is a nice picnic area with ample car parking. The line skirts around Bryn Nicol. Although the peak is out of the picture to our left, it rises to 1,276 feet. Sugarloaf Tunnel is 1,001 yards long, and inside the old border between Carmarthenshire and Breconshire is crossed. Nowadays, Dyfed and Powys, the official division between South and Mid Wales. Sugarloaf Halt lies on the summit, 820 feet above sea level, and at 50 miles and 65 chains from Craven Arms. The recently introduced Summer Sunday Rambler services call here by request. In steam days, this was a crossing place, and the halt was provided for the ganger and 2 signalmen, along with their families who lived nearby. The descent on the other side of Sugarloaf is at 1 in 80. Incidentally, the A483 road also squeezes through the narrow pass with steep hills and a couple of hairpin bends. Builth level crossing is typical, with its 10 miles per hour speed limit. The small sign bearing a white cross is an AWS cancellation indicator. In other words, the automatic warning, which sounds for Builth level crossing, is not valid in this direction. The bridge carries the line over the river Irfon, upon which the town of Llanwrtyd Wells is situated. The old station was refurbished in 1988 and is now occupied by a bacon wholesaler. The town has the distinction of being the smallest in Britain, with a population of just 600. Meaning the church by the ford, Llanwrtyd became popular as a health resort for the taking of the waters, in this case sulphur. The first well was discovered here at Dolau Station in 1732 by one Theophilus Evans. Llanwrtyd was one of 3 spa towns on the railway. Business tailed off during the 20th century with the popularity of sea bathing. Just after the Second World War, with the advent of the National Health Service, one by one the wells fell into disuse. We've now moved forwards beyond Llangadog Wells, one of the 3 spa towns, to milepost 41. This is Kilmerry Halt. Kilmerry Tunnel is 115 yards long. Shrewsbury Tunnel is just 64 yards long and, like Kilmerry, is on a falling gradient of 1 in 80. A steel girder bridge takes us across the River Wye, which flows through Llanwrtyd to the north and Builth Wells about 1.5 miles to the south. Following the same valley between the two towns was the former Mid-Wales and later Cambrian Railway, en route from Llanelli to Brecon. A physical connection was made between the Mid-Wales and Central Wales by means of a spur, which diverged to the left just this side of the 45 sign. The bridge takes us over the former Cambrian track bed as we arrive at Builth Road on what used to be the down platform. The imposing building originally housed railway offices, but long ago were converted into flats. The low-level station of the Mid-Wales opened first in 1861. The station building is now a public house, the last trains having called here in 1962. With Wales's biggest agricultural show, the Royal Welsh, being held annually at Builth Wells in July, the former high-level station becomes the railhead for a connecting bus service. The old line ran right past what is now the showground and would be a prime case for reinstatement, if cost were no object. We are now passing milepost 34. We are now passing alongside the small village of Howie. Although there has never been a station at Howie, there was a crossing place where heavy trains had their Builth Road banking engines detached. The 1 in 74 rise becomes a 1 in 110 fall just before the approaching bridge. The gradient continues for 2 miles right through Llandrindod. For more than 20 years, the up platform was trackless. Trains used to pass a half-mile further to the north of the station, alongside the old number 2 signal box. It was abolished in 1986 with the introduction of the no signalman token system. Since then, the box has been moved to its current position on the down platform. At the same time, the up track was reinstated, and trains now cross in their rightful place. The springs at Llandrindod had been known of for centuries, but their first exploitation was in 1749. The town owes much of its prosperity to the railway, and the Victorian buildings still reflect this period of expansion. A new spring at Rock Park was discovered in 1867, and the pump room and associated bathhouse that sprang up around it can still be seen. Although temporarily out of use, the springs were renowned for their 3 varieties of water: sulfur, saline and magnesium. The station has seen a complete transformation from its forlorn state of only a few years ago. The buildings are still occupied and the booking office still staffed. The cast iron glazed canopy used to adorn the County Council headquarters building. The former LNWR signal box opens a few hours each week as a museum. This is also the changeover point for the train crews, and Shrewsbury-based driver Martin Loaf now takes charge. The Central Wales Railway had first reached the spa town from the north in 1865. So for 3 years, Llandrindod was the terminus. Real trains occasionally find their way onto the heart of Wales. in this case associated with the already mentioned Royal Welsh Show, which incidentally receives as many as 50,000 visitors per day. Llandrindod level crossing over Builth Road is nowadays operated by the driver. This was where the number 2 signal box stood prior to 1986. The former passing loop had been located here following the abolition of the number 1 box in 1964. And the need at the time for both crossing and loop to be locally supervised. This section of line from Llandrindod to Pen-y-bont was doubled in 1876 to increase capacity. The old double formation can clearly be seen here. Incidentally, they're not about to relay it. The sleepers are merely part of the general replacement program. The first station beyond Pen-y-bont is Dolau. Regional Railways invested £40,000 in the little halt in 1991. Local members of the Heart of Wales Travellers Association look after the pristine station. A small wooden waiting shelter has been provided, along with a station clock. The fruits of their efforts are for all to see in the sheer number and variety of awards received. The section from Pen-y-bont to Naclas opened in 1864. And we join the line on a 1 in 122 grade, climbing up towards Llangynllo. The station was located here, over a mile away from the village of Llangynllo, to satisfy the demands of the local landowner, who had a nearby shooting lodge. This is the line's summit at 980 feet above sea level. We now enter the 647-yard Llangynllo tunnel. The tunnel marks the start of a 10-mile-long falling gradient, much of which is at 1 in 60. One of the most distinctive features on the whole line is Knackless Viaduct, designed to be reminiscent of Knackless Castle, which overlooked the head of the valley. It has embattled towers at either end, with merlons and embrasures along the parapets. The 214-yard-long viaduct has 13 arches and stands 75 feet above the valley floor. This section from Knackless to Knighton opened in 1862. We are now in the valley of the River Teme, on our continuing descent towards the agricultural market town of Knighton. line crosses the River Teme at Pantyffynnon, and in so doing we pass from Wales into England and from Powys into Shropshire. The passing loop at Knighton had been abolished, but to provide more flexibility, it was reinstated in 1990. The station building on the downside shows the original architecture of the Central Wales. It is now out of use and boarded up. Being a border town, the signs are still bilingual. Tref-y-Clawdd means the town on the dyke, referring to the 1200-year-old Offers Dyke.
Pantyffynnon Box.
How do you do? M51 now, right at Knighton. I'll put the Llandovery in. Can I take the arms, please?
Right. Carry on.
Knighton to Craven Arms is the final token section. This was originally just a 12¼ mile long branch from Craven Arms on the Shrewsbury and Hereford Railway. It opened in 2 stages to Bucknell in 1860 and Knighton a year later in 1861. We are now just 1 mile from Craven Arms on a descent of 1 in 80. A sharp curve takes us through a full 90 degrees to Craven Arms Junction, where we join the regional railway's main line from Cardiff, Newport and Hereford. Craven Arms has been part of railway folklore for over a century. Originally a substantial station called Craven Arms and Stokesay, it was also the junction for the Great Western route to Much Wenlock, Wellington and Market Drayton, the line diverging some 3 miles to the north. The Craven Arms was originally an 18th century coaching inn, an important staging point on the old Hereford Road, around which today's town grew up, helped in no small part by the railway. The extensive track work and carriage sheds to our left are now out of use, the only exception being the far siding, which is still available for engineers or emergency use.
Yeah, go on then. It's all right.
The gradient profile for the final part of our journey sees a rising gradient averaging 1 in 100 up to Church Stretton. The Shrewsbury and Hereford Railway opened throughout in December 1853 and became jointly owned by the LNWR and GWR in 1862. Note the extraordinarily tall signal posts on the down line to enable a clear line of sight from beyond the overbridge. There is little trace of the Bishop's Castle branch, which until 1935 diverged to the west just after the bridge at the former Stretford Bridge junction. We are now approaching Marshbrook, which survives as a block post, the station, serving only a handful of houses, having closed in 1958. A particularly scenic stretch of line, flanked on the left by the 1,695-foot-high Long Mynd. This was the site of Little Stretton Halt, which also closed in 1958. This is the summit of the Shrewsbury and Hereford at 630 feet above sea level. Church Stretton lies at milepost 12 3/4 measured from Shrewsbury. The Class 158 Express is on a Manchester Piccadilly to Cardiff Central service. Immediately to our left after the bridge can be seen the original station building. The signal box here is normally switched out of section. Spot the old water crane surviving behind the signal post. We are now showing on the track circuits of Dorrington, another intermediate block post. The signal box is located at milepost 6, and the station was another that went along with the local all-station service in 1958. We are now on the outskirts of Shrewsbury, the county town of Shropshire. Just this side of the footbridge are the abutments of the erstwhile Shropshire and Montgomeryshire Light Railway, a local line which terminated at Shrewsbury Abbey Station. It closed in 1933, but the old site saw further use as an oil terminal up until 1988. Sutton Bridge Junction sees the convergence of the Cambrian line from Aberystwyth and Pwllheli. This was also the junction of the Severn Valley Railway, which converged from behind the signal box. Passenger services ceased in 1963, although the stub remained in use as the access to the previously mentioned oil terminal. The abbey itself comes into view. This is Coleham Viaduct. And of course we now come within view of Severn Bridge Junction signal box, star of our feature, One Day in Severn. It's located at the junction with the Wolverhampton line. The little-used up and down loop lines form the third side of a triangle. Europe's largest surviving mechanical signal box houses 180 levers, though many are now out of use. The large building dominating the horizon is Shrewsbury Prison. We now arrive in Bay Platform 6. Unbeknown to most passengers, the platforms actually straddle the River Severn, hence the name of the junction. Shrewsbury Station opened in 1848, the first line being that to Chester. In 4 hours, our Class 153 has covered a total of 121.5 miles. The engine is shut down for a break of about 38 minutes, prior to returning through the heart of Wales. I'm standing on top of the mighty Severn Bridge Junction signal box, which overlooks Shrewsbury Station. And I'm here today, Saturday, June the 30th, 1990, to discover how Europe's largest mechanical signal box works and what it does. Divided into 3 main sessions, 1 day in 7 follows a typical day in the life of this dinosaur from the steam age.
What are we doing? Oh, 5 past now. So in another 3 minutes, I think this Houston will be here.
It's due in 16
Yeah.
years.
Ah.
It's coming now.
He's coming now, okay? You see, we'll hear 233 signal back on that main now. Yeah, we're coming down next to the coaches, this line next to the coaches. There you are. Now, Ken's accepted, Wyndham's have to give a release for that on that other end, and Ken's accepted on the bell here. So they do that simultaneously. And of course that will clear, with that release lever there, will clear his signal to the other end. You'll be able to clear his signal to the other end. You see, it's coming by the disc now. It'll straight out, so through this crossover over here onto the down lane.
And that's got to go all the way to the bridge.
Video 125 has also produced 2 other driver's eye views from Wales. The Cambrian coast takes us from Machynlleth to Barmouth, the most interesting and scenic section of this famous line, which includes Dyfi Junction, the notorious Vriog Cliffs, and of course Barmouth Bridge. There are also features on the Talyllyn and Fairborn and Barmouth steam railways. If that whets your appetite for a narrow-gauge driver's eye view, climb aboard Double Fairly Merddin Emrys for a trip up the Ffestiniog Railway. The first mile out of Porthmadog is in complete contrast to the rest of the line, being virtually level and dead straight. Ffestiniog and Conwy then takes you aboard a Class 101 DMU for the regional railways trip down the Conwy Valley line, all the way to Llandrindod. The ride is certainly a lot less bumpy, and the driver even gets a seat. If you'd like to know more about these or any of our other productions, please send a stamped addressed envelope for our free colour catalogue.